How's it, grade 10? So today we're going on to a new section called Trigonometry. We're going to be working from slides 1 to 10 from the PowerPoint Trigonometry. So now, what is trigonometry? Well, trigonometry, we deal with triangles, okay? And we always talk about an angle with this triangle, and it's always an angle, or could be an angle theta, okay? It's like a zero with a line through it. It's just a Greek letter, okay? And from an angle that we know, for example, like this theta, we get the hypotenuse, okay? So I'm just going to label the sides of the triangle. Now, the hypotenuse is always opposite the 90 degrees. So here's our 90, and the side opposite the 90 would be this one here. So this would be our hypotenuse. Straight away, okay? Then we get an opposite side from our angle, which would be this side over here. And then we get the adjacent side. And the adjacent side is next to it. So it's over here. So you can never get confused with the adjacent and the hypotenuse, because the hypotenuse is always opposite the 90. So I would always label that one first. Then you can decide which is the adjacent side, because it's the one that's next to the angle that isn't the hypotenuse. Okay, so that is just defining which one is opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse to the angle that we are given. So what is trig? Now, trig is just the ratio of sides. Okay, for example, we could have opposite over adjacent, or we could have adjacent over hypotenuse, or opposite over hypotenuse, things like that. Okay, and we get these trig functions that are those ratios. So for example, we can have sine theta, we can have cos theta, and we can have tan theta, okay? And if we look at what sine is from the angle that we know, sine will be the ratio opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, cos will be the ratio adjacent over hypotenuse. And then tan will be opposite over adjacent. Okay, and that is the ratios for those trig functions. Now, you're probably thinking, how am I going to remember all of this? Well, there's a silly little rhyme that you can remember, and it goes like this. Silly old hens cackle and hackle till old age. And how does that help you remember what is what? Well, S is OH. In other words, sine is opposite over hypotenuse for sine. C, which stands for cos, is A over H, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. And then T stands for tan, is O over A, opposite over adjacent. And that's just a nice little way to remember what these are, okay? And we are going to be using these to solve for triangles, okay? So if we look at example 1. So example 1 is saying, write down the trigonometric ratios for angle P and Q. So if we have a look at the angle P first, which is this angle over here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in my opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is always the one opposite the 90. Okay, and I'm just going to abbreviate it to be HYP. Then the side opposite P would be this one. And then the one adjacent to this one would be here. And I'm just going to color code these because you'll see we're changing the angle in a second. So for this angle P, this would be the opposite side, the adjacent side, and the hypotenuse side. Okay, so let's have a look at what sine would be. Now sine, remember, is silly old hens. So it's O over H. So O is your opposite, which is the side QR, over silly old hens, which is your hypotenuse, is your PQ side. Okay, let's have a look at cos. Cos is cackle and hackle. So it is A over H, which is adjacent over hypotenuse. So it's PR over PQ. And then we've got the last one. It is till old age. So O is opposite, which is your QR. And age is A, which is PR. Okay, now let's have a look at angle Q, which is this angle over here. Okay, now Q is going to have different opposites and adjacents, but the hypotenuse will remain the same because it's opposite the 90. So if we look at Q, the opposite side for Q would be this one over here. So this would be the opposite for Q, and I'm just going to highlight that in yellow. And then the adjacent for Q would be this side over here. And just highlight that in yellow. So you can see that different angles would have different ratios. Okay, so let's see what sine Q is. You remember sine is silly old hens, O over H. So O is your opposite, which is PR, over silly old hens, which is H, which is still this PQ side. Cos is cackle and hackle. So cackle and, which is this one, which is QR. And hackle is your hypotenuse, which is PQ. Then tan is till old age. Old, O, which is PR. Age, adjacent, which is QR. Okay, so we've solved for that triangle with the ratios of those trig functions. Now, if we look at example 2, it says write down 2 trigonometric ratios for each of the following. So, if you had a look here, we only had one 90-degree triangle. Okay, in this one, we've got 2 90-degree triangles. We've got this FGH one, and then we've got this GKH one. So I'm just going to highlight the 2 different triangles. We've got the green one. And then they're talking about this angle F. So I'm going to work in this FKG. Okay, so there's our 2 triangles that we're looking at. So the H would be, also, we could also deal with this one here. So let me highlight this one in a different color. So you see we've got 3 different right angle triangles there. So if we look at H, now for the green triangle, so we're looking at this angle here. For the green triangle, this is your hypotenuse straight away, because it's opposite the 90. Then from here, this would be your opposite. And this one here would be your adjacent. Okay, so let me just label those. So that's for the green, 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 and we're talking about this angle here. Okay, so sine H. So sine is silly old hens, opposite over a hypotenuse. So opposite is FG over FH. But we also have that this H is in this orange triangle. Now with the orange triangle, now grade 10s, I'm not going to write all of it in, just try and keep up here. With the orange triangle, which is the smaller one, this is your hypotenuse side. Okay, so sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So opposite would be this KG side over the hypotenuse for this one would be GH. Okay, now let's have a look at cos H. Let's look at the green one first. Cos is cackle and howl. Okay, cackle and hackle, or cackle and howl. So then, so that is adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent would be GH over hypotenuse would be your FH. Equals. Now let's have a look at the green one. So our it's adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent side for this one would be, now just be very careful here, grade 10s. This is your hypotenuse, this one here for the orange one, and this here would be your adjacent. So adjacent would be KH over hypotenuse GH. All right, let's have a look at tan H now for the green one. So that is opposite over adjacent. So your opposite is FG over GH. Let's look at the orange one. So again, opposite over adjacent. So opposite from this angle here for the orange would be this KG. Over the adjacent would be this KH. Because it can't be this one because it's opposite the 90. Now let's look at F. Okay, and the green for the green triangle, opposite, because that's sine, opposite over hypotenuse. Opposite would be this side here, GH, over the hypotenuse would be your FH. Let's look in the blue triangle now. So the opposite for this F triangle would be this GK. And the hypotenuse for this blue one, if that's 90, that's 90. So this is your hypotenuse here, which is FG. Okay, let's look at F, cos F now. So cos is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the adjacent side for F is this FG over the hypotenuse would be your FH. Now let's look at the blue one. So adjacent for this one here, for the blue one, it can't be this side. This is your hypotenuse, so it must be this FK over the hypotenuse FG. Let's have a look at tan F now for the green one. So that is opposite over adjacent. So opposite of F would be this GH over adjacent for this angle would be this FG. Let's look at the blue one now. So opposite over adjacent. So your opposite side for F would be GK. And adjacent, it can't be this side. That's your hypotenuse. It must be FK. FK. All right, guys, that probably looked a little bit hectic, more than it should have, but it's not that bad if you break it down into individual little triangles. Okay, so just make sure you understand how you pick up your ratios and for which triangles. Okay, so grade 10s, I would like you to do exercise 5.2, numbers 2 to 9 for me, please. Thank you.